So Shawande, did I pronounce that right?
Yeah, you got it right.
I'm like a
Hey,
name
Glenn.
ex. I'm a name expert. Yep. Thanks so much for coming on the show. And so, CEO of Raceman Telepictures LLC, Washington D.C., DMV filmmaker like myself. Tell me a little bit more about who you are, what you do, what you've been up to.
Oh, I'm a native Washingtonian actually, and I love my hometown. So all of my work has been with a DC centric vibe to it, with a theme to it. So I'm also a proud Howard University alum.
Okay.
Go Kamala. Um, I'm glad that HBCUs are getting their moment in the sun, in the media. Uh, I majored in broadcast production, minored in drama, and I'm a filmmaker and independent filmmaker and an actor. So, um,
Fantastic.
this pandemic was when it hit was really, really scary because like every way that I knew how to make a living just came to a stop. Now,
Yeah.
the on the bright side of the pandemic, it allowed me time to just reflect, um, hone my craft. As both a filmmaker and a writer and an actor by taking online classes, etc. But yeah, it was scary there for a moment.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Me and my wife, we were concerned a little bit. We just brought home a kid, and we were a bit concerned. But I think I was blessed, and me and the wife got lucky. She was able to Zoom teach. I was able to do a lot of live streaming, virtual events, corporate industrial things, and then like we were discussing offline a little bit. I started this podcast, and you had asked me what inspired local artists, and I guess I started local, like first within like on my phone, like people I could text directly on my phone. Those, all those folks that we were working. I think my last acting gig was March 10th, and I think my last crew gig was March 12th. They
Mm,
so March the acting gig, everybody was like social distancing, hand sanitizer, masks, as COVID concerns were rising. But March 12th, everybody was doing the same, gloves, masks, hand sanitizer all over the place. But they decided to cancel the show. They just basically decided to cancel the show right away, um, halfway through setup. So halfway through our set, turned into a strike, tore it down, packed it up,
oh wow.
and that was my last on set gig until I was back. I've been back on set last week on a on an industrial acting gig,
Okay.
military industrial,
Okay.
one of those training videos for the military, um, playing Air Force, senior Air Force command ranked person. But um, yeah, starting off, I just, kind of just started off local with people that were like direct right there in my phone, and then kind of reached
Mm,
out and, like stuck with Maryland, Virginia, DC, and maybe, ran into some people that I worked with on LinkedIn and Facebook. And then it kind of spread out. I just started reaching out to all freelancers, gig workers, film, TV, audio, video, music, art, that sort of thing, just really branching out. And, but it's always great to get a fellow DMV filmmaker resident, one of the fellow DMV filmmakers
yeah,
on.
back in the day, like from '94 to 2000, I used to run the AIVF, which was headquartered in New York, the Association of Independent Video and Filmmakers. I ran the DC salon, and so we're kindred spirits in that sense because um, I- in that short period of time, like the New York sent me a list of all of the local, um, well, actually more than the local. They sent me the filmmakers that were like in the state of Maryland and in the state of Virginia as well as DC, and it was all of like 200, maybe 216, 220 people that they had listed. And within the first couple of years of running that salon, we had over 200 people in DC proper.
Hmm.
So I mean, it just exploded, and it spoke to a need for um, filmmakers here locally to just have a vehicle to meet and to create and to collaborate.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I miss about it, because I gave up running it when I became a parent
Hmm.
back in 2000.
Hmm.
And not only a parent, but a parent of a child with special needs. So that, took priority.
Of course.
And
Yeah.
I've been, but in between, like the free moments that I had, um, still creating, still working on other people's projects, pursuing the acting. So
Well, now I think with the rise of Facebook, Instagram, before it was
mhm.
MySpace and then Facebook, and now Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, all these other social, all these websites, these crewing up, networking, collaborating websites now, Production Hub, Backstage, Staff Me Up. I mean, there's a million different sites out there now. Now there's apps, and it would have been, it would have been nice to know that that site existed right when I graduated college. I graduated '04, so
Okay.
for me, I graduated in '04 with a bachelor's in film and TV, but
Oh, okay.
I got lucky and went right to Discovery Channel in Silver Spring. So that was kind of
Yep.
a blessing there in a way, because it was just kind of a TV job right out of college. And I saw a lot of fellow Towson alumni end up there. A lot of Howard alumni, I think, ended up there. And that was kind of where, at that point, it was, I'm going to experiment with some passion projects, some side projects, some independent stuff. That's when Google and YouTube and Facebook really started to kick off, and Craigslist. And now there's just, not only are there sites, there's like, mobile
And
app,
and at
mobile
the
app. Yeah.
and at the risk of sounding like an old man, when I graduated from college, none of that existed. you know,
Hmm.
but you may have you may have even run into one of my I don't know if she worked at Discovery. That might have been Nat Geo, so never mind. But one of my assistant producers, um, she was she's younger, and she graduated a little bit before you, but not much before you, and was just like invaluable in my first project. And then she worked with me years later on my on the new N word,
So what? So
something that
you
I did that turned into a web series. So
you were talking a little bit about that offline. The new N word.
yeah, it was a comedy that addressed workplace racism, and it starred Eric Todd Dellums, who's a phenomenal actor. He's the son of the late Congressman Ron Dellums, and he was in he played he played the drug lord Luther Mahoney in Homicide: Life on the Street.
Okay.
So that's that was a Baltimore TV series before that predates The Wire.
Hmm.
And speaking of The Wire, he was also in The Wire in a smaller role as the medical examiner in that. But he's also in the TV series Homeland, where he played this like creepy doctor. I mean, it was, yeah. He and Eric is a very memorable figure, because for one, he's very tall, um, and he's, like I said, he's immensely talented. And I was very fortunate, because I had been trying to get him in a project of mine for a while, and our schedules just didn't link up. So when I got him for the new N word, and I shot that film 10 years ago now, he delivered just like I knew he would. So I'm looking to work with him on other projects as well.
So tell me a little bit more about that. What's the idea behind what is the new N word, or what is
Oh,
and so what's the
I,
film?
I don't want to. I don't want to ruin it for people who may want to see it. You can see it on YouTube because, like
Okay.
I said, it's a series on YouTube. But it was based on a real story that happened. It's a bit embellished, but on a real story that happened to a childhood friend of mine who worked at who worked at Pepco,
Hmm.
and one of his coworkers, had this incident where it just, kind of spun out of control and got there it is, spun out of control, and comedy ensues as a result of it.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, and um, and so I, put my own personal spin on it. Also, Joe Hansard, who was another great local actor, um, who was a member of AIBF. That's how we met. I tapped him. He was also in The Wire. So yeah, there's some great talent,
And
and
I've done a number of,
not to mention the incomparable Fred Strother.
yeah, I've actually worked with Joe Hansard on
Oh, okay, all right,
couple of projects. Yeah,
yeah,
and yeah, he's been doing this work for a while. You said Strother,
yep, Fred Strother.
Fred Strother.
He was he's probably best known for the original movie 12 Monkeys with
Okay.
Brad Pitt,
Okay.
and he played a supporting role in that, but it was very memorable. He was one of the members of one of the people institutionalized in the insane asylum
Hmm.
where they put Brad Pitt.
Okay.
Yeah,
I recognize him. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, and Fred was also in The Wire. He played the wheelchair bound politician.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, he's a very versatile actor. And I got him just before he went to New York and performed on Broadway. So that took him out of DC for a while. But he's another native Washingtonian. Maybe another potential interview for you. I mean, these
Okay.
because both Fred and Eric are still here in the area, and of course, Rain Pryor co-starred in the film. She's the daughter of the legendary Richard Pryor.
Okay.
So yeah, we had a really, really, really good cast, and the timing was perfect. And the star of the film, James J.J. Johnson, who you see in a lot of theater productions here around the area. So we had a great pool of talent, and that's one thing that you know is an advantage of being from a filmmaker's perspective, being an advantage in this city, which is a primarily theater town. You have
Hmm.
Arena Stage and Woolly Mammoth and The Source. So you have all of these people who are committed to the character.
Hmm.
You know, so
Yeah.
you have a rich source of talent, a huge talent pool here. You know, Deirdre Johnson, who's like a Helen Hayes Award staple here in this city, who was also in the production, um, and just does a lot of theater work and is now directing. Um, it's the perfect atmosphere to really grow the entertainment industry, the film and TV entertainment industry here.
Absolutely. Yeah, and there's definitely a lot of room to grow. There's a lot of talent here that's eager and hungry to experiment and delve into unique projects. And we get a lot of outside sources. I think the biggest problem I have with a lot of production alliances or a lot of film alliances, film and TV alliances, whatever they are, is that I've gone to a lot of these meet and greets and these events that these alliances, if you will, put together, and really they're not catering to big productions by Maryland or Virginia or DC. What they're catering to is, you know, big outside studios coming here and visiting. But one production's here for a month and then they're gone. And now what?
Right.
But if you're building, you know, a micro Hollywood or, you know, a micro New York here in Virginia, here in DC, here in Maryland, West Virginia, Delaware, and you're focusing on, okay, we are self-sustained. We don't have outside productions. A&E, AMC or A&E comes to Richmond and does a period piece for 2 seasons, and then that's it. And it's like, oh, we had Legends and Lies, we had the American West, and I'm like, yeah, that was 5 years ago.
Right.
That was 10 years ago. What are we shooting now? Oh, we had that documentary. We had that docudrama that they shot, you know, it was a miniseries, and that was like a month, 3 years ago.
Yep.
What is the steady work? And for a while, I don't know if you ever worked on those ID crime shows. I've been in, you know,
Yeah, I was in Who the Bleep Did I Marry?
right. I mean, I was probably
Still haunts me to this day. I'm just joking.
hey, listen, I played a detective in maybe 60, 70 different episodes of, you know, a whole handful of those ID shows, and it was great. But then guess what? You know, Sirens left because Discovery left. Storyhouse, I think, is still in the area, and there's another production company, Wide Net Productions, that's still in the area. But there's only so many shows that one production company is doing. But since Discovery left, that means ID left, and since ID left, all these post houses, all these production houses and post houses left as well.
Yep.
You know, and for whatever reason, I mean, it's 2020. I don't see why you can't work remotely. You can't, you know, ship tapes or ship drives, or you can't use Google Drives or these, you know, cloud drives. But it just seems like half the production houses and post production houses left because Discovery left. But when I go to these, a lot of these alliances, these film alliances, whatever they may be, these production alliances, I'm like, what are we doing to be a production environment?
Yeah.
Not what,
you know,
yeah.
this was a concern of mine in you know, like back in the mid 90s when I was running AIBF, and one thing that I observed just from years of the DC Film Office, you know, having, like, you know, periods of success, but no sustained success, especially not like the Maryland Film Office, quite frankly, because the Maryland Film Office had the same number of people as the DC Film Office. But the key difference between the Maryland film industry and DC film industry is that you had like successful Hollywood filmmakers that stayed in Maryland. That was the difference, and that was the major difference, and that was the driver to bring the industry here. When you look at like Barry Levinson, you look at John Waters, you know, these filmmakers, they stayed,
Right.
and so they had the, you know, they had the power to bring the industry here. So you had shows like Homicide and The Wire, and then those shows had longevity. You know, they lasted for more than 2 seasons. You know, now with the problem with DC is that Hollywood only comes to DC to shoot the exteriors.
Yeah.
The exteriors are not run by the city of Washington, DC. That's federal property.
Right.
So once they shoot the exteriors, they'll go to Maryland and shoot the rest of the film. So we had that working against us, and also we didn't have any filmmakers who were DC natives that either, you know, had the incentive or the interest to stay. Now, one of the area filmmakers, George Pelicanos, you know, he was a writer on The Wire. you know, he got a series at HBO, but that, you know, that didn't translate. There was one episode, I mean, there was one TV show that was based in Washington, D.C. back in 1990, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And that was A Man Called Hawk. I don't
Yep.
know if you remember that, but Avery Brooks was the star. Avery Brooks played the role of Hawk in the very popular TV show Spencer for Hire.
Mm-hmm.
So they
And,
did a spinoff, but that was one show, and you cannot build an industry on one show because guess what? That show lasted one season,
and that's your last one season.
and we're right back at zero,
And
ground
and
zero. So,
and my dad and so my dad was a DC cop when I was growing up, but
mhm,
he, you know, he got lucky enough to be a part of special operations division, and they did escorts for, and you know, blocking off streets for, you know, presidential motorcades
mhm,
or ambassador, you know, special visitor escorts, that sort of deal, but also the film sets. And that's a little bit, you know, that among some other things, but that was a big influence on me becoming a filmmaker because he would show me some pictures. He got pictures taken with the guy that played Hawk. He was also on Deep Space Nine. I forget the actor's name. I think you just mentioned his name. The guy who played
Avery
Hawk.
Brooks.
Avery Brooks, yeah.
Mhm.
And he played he was on Deep Space Nine. He was one of the captains, I think,
Oh,
on the,
right, that's right. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So yeah, I mean, he was the sidekick on Spencer
Spencer for Hire.
Spencer for Hire, and then he got his own show.
Right.
But
It was a spinoff from that.
right, it was a spinoff from that,
Yeah, A
and
Man Called Hawk.
a
That
man
was the
Hawk.
name of it.
Yeah, but like you mentioned, and my dad worked on that show, you know, blocking streets, and got to
Wow.
get some pictures. You know, the actors are always doing photo ops with the local cops, and my dad has a number, you know, like True Lies. My dad blocked streets off, and you know, did like the police involvement when it comes to productions like True Lies, Man Called Hawk, you know, those sort of productions. And so that was an influence for me. But you're right. There's a whole show based in DC, lasts one season. Maybe because it's too expensive to work in DC. I mean, like I remember a year or two ago, you know, a lot of actor buddies of mine, they're like, "Oh, we're in Wonder Woman," and I'm like, You're probably not even gonna get credited. Wonder Woman's in town for a week, you
Right.
know, and I'm not, and don't get me wrong, I'm not shitting on your work. It's probably great pay. It's great work. It's, you know, if you work hard enough, you might get lucky. You get that one role. You might get a line in Wonder Woman 1984, and that's a dope opportunity. But let's look at the big picture. Like, what is coming here and staying here?
Right.
What's being made here from the ground up? And so it's not only an aspect of I got to jump on Wonder Woman 1980. I was a PA on National Treasure 2, and we shot for about 2 weeks at the Library of Congress, and then I think they did another week at the Smithsonian, and they did something in Virginia, and that was it. 3 weeks in the DMV, and then the rest, you know, 2 or 3 months in a studio or in a lot in LA or wherever they were shooting. And it's like, that's cool. Live Free Die Hard, aka Die Hard 4, was shooting, I think, a week or two in Baltimore, but they were shooting Baltimore for DC.
Right.
They were in
Right.
Baltimore streets, and then I think they came to DC for a day, shot like some real quick exteriors, but they were in the Baltimore streets to be story-wise DC streets.
Right.
They were in Baltimore for about a week, and then they're out. And it's like,
Yeah.
where's the Wires? Where's the House of Cards? Where's the, you know, and more of them? It just can't be like this. Oh, but we have House of Cards, and like that's it. Like I'm a workaholic, you know, I'm a pessimist, and I'm a pessimist for a good reason. Like, we need to work harder. We need to be more creative, more influential. Too many people leaving. Like you said, we have the few folks. I mean, John Waters, his vision, everything that inspires him and everything that he makes is based in Baltimore. I don't know where he lives, but you know, he does well enough to where he's comfortable here. He might do like some, you know, bizarre indie film like he's always done. His entire career has been bizarre, off the wall indie films inspired by bizarre, off the wall Baltimore life. And that's been his whole vision. But you have other filmmakers. I mean, Dave Chappelle left, you know what I mean? Because there's nothing going on here. And that is
Right.
the frustrating part. And
Right.
so for like the last 5 years, and I wouldn't even say last 5 years, to the best of my knowledge, I'd say from 2012 to 2018, we had all the crime shows being shot here, all of them. And then that was it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
now nothing again. And even before quarantine, there was like we were down to like one, maybe two production companies doing 2 to 3 shows each, and it's just
There are a couple of there are a couple of issues at hand. I can't speak to Baltimore or the Maryland Film Commission, but I know with DC, they're hamstrung by um, you know by a limited amount of available funds. But now you know with all of the construction, gentrification, this influx of money, there should be a larger pot available to grow it, and also there's a new generation of filmmakers here that can make this viable.
yeah,
But it's also the way that this area is almost ignored by the industry, other than shooting exteriors and using Baltimore streets to mimic DC streets.
hmm
Um, but that I mean, but that can change. You know what I mean?
yeah,
But it's because when you look at the talent that has come out of DC, um, it it rivals our neighbors up north in Baltimore. I mean, when you look at the actors, you look at um, um, Taraji P. Henson,
hmm
Dave Chappelle, um, Jeffrey Wright. I mean, the list goes on and on.
yeah, yeah,
But they're not filmmakers, and that's the key difference.
yeah, and
So we need
listen,
someone at that level that's a filmmaker that can build the industry.
exactly, and
Yeah.
I disagree, because I think if you have this collective of these just general artists, and a
Hmm.
lot of, because listen, I've seen, like, last 5 years now, it's kind of like the new thing that if an actor's tied to the second season of a show or more, they're getting
Hmm.
producer credits now. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Uh, Kate Mara is like the producer of her own show, A Teacher, that she's acting in, and she was always credited as a producer of it. And so, Taraji P. Henson, talented. I remember I first saw her on A Person of Interest, blew me away, and then I found out, she's a local. She's born and bred here in DC. Dave
Yeah.
Chappelle, um, Tony Braxton, I think, is Maryland.
Hmm.
Martin Lawrence, I think, is Maryland and
Yep.
DC. I
Yep.
mean, but see, Chappelle is a whole embodied creator, writer, producer, director, actor, comedian. Taraji P. Henson, I think, has some producer credits now. If everybody, if all these folks were to get together and be like, okay, let's put together at least one or two things, just the money, just the name, just using name recognition,
Right.
and getting together and be like, okay, listen, screenplay contest, film, let's take a look at the AFI and do like another film festival, and then let's start looking at these films. Let's start looking at these local filmmakers and just build upon that. But
Well, actually, DC has several. In fact, they may have they may have too many film festivals.
right,
The biggest festival by far is Film Fest DC, and that's because it's supported by the DC Office of Motion Picture and Film, and has been since its inception. But there are also smaller film festivals. One that I co-founded with Carol Perdeau and Natasha Reddick, the late Natasha Reddick. May she rest in peace. The DC Independent Film Festival. But there are even more film festivals that have popped up since then. Um, I'm trying to think. There's one. I think it's called the Washington Independent Film Festival. There's one, the DC Independent Film Festival. There's Film Fest DC. There was another film festival geared toward like Black and people of color films that I'm blanking on the name right now. So so that's, you know, that's in existence. But what we really need is another organization similar to AIVF and women in film and video do a great job of you know, promoting and supporting artists, but there needs to be that one mainstay organization that is attractive to both filmmakers and actors, that can help kind of bring the community together. You know, right now they're just these, you know, different organizations that kind of exist, and they have, you know, their own like via their membership, their own, like, you know, little clique and group of filmmakers, but none that have like a breakout director or a breakout star as of yet.
Yeah.
So the efforts that, you know, it's been there for decades at this point, but there just needs to be one hit show. There just needs to be like a Wire or a Lovecraft Country, you know,
And that's what's
that
frustrating, because
kicks it off.
there has been
Right. Yeah.
number of, you know, amazingly major hit shows. There has been,
Yeah.
and especially, you know, thinking Maryland. I mean, Homicide, Wire, The Corner was, you know, an award-winning miniseries, which was kind of like the prequel to The Wire. House of Cards. You
Yeah.
know,
Yep. House of Cards was by far the biggest, and you know, here in DC we had West Wing.
yeah.
You know, but we're talking about shows that are like 30, 20, 10 years ago at this point.
But West Wing, I mean, was West Wing completely done in DC, or was West
It was,
Wing
I think that was done in yeah, well, the exteriors, there
right?
again, the exteriors.
Right, because I think all the, you know, I think it was a studio in New York.
Right, right.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, uh, it's just, yeah, it's frustrating, I guess. It's something. It's definitely something to look into and see what kind of potential there is to rework that whole thing. So yeah. Well, you know, moving on to more important business. What have you been up to? What is how have you been how have you been impacted by the quarantine and the shelter in place, and how what have you been working on in the
Well,
meantime?
the most recent project that I completed, I was a co-producer on this documentary, The American Lows. It just got picked up by Amazon. Um, you know, I'm working on a couple of other projects like writing and producing a series and a feature film. You know, that's based on a novel by a local writer. So, you know, those things are keeping me busy. But the pandemic has really impacted like my, you know, because independent filmmakers always have like a main gig, and my main gig, I was working as a live shot producer at NBC News Channel, and the pandemic just wiped that out completely. So
Yeah.
hopefully with this new administration, maybe, you know, that'll be an opportunity. But you know, I'm not complaining about it or whining about it. I'm just, you know, focusing that time I would have spent there on my career as an indie filmmaker and a writer and an actor.
Well, yeah, you made mention of, you know, new administration. What I can say is that I can foresee it being a great year,
Hmm.
a great next year. Um, yeah, I mean, with that, but race man telepictures. Tell me more about that, and what you guys what like, as far as the title, you know, Race Man Telepictures, and you know, what kind of projects have you done, and that sort of thing.
Well, the very first Raceman Telepictures production was Talking Shop. and that was the first time that I got a chance to actually work. Well, it wasn't the first time. It was the first time I got a chance to cast Fred Strother, and 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 um, it consists of all local talent. Um, that was based on uh, a, a fictional journalist who had just returned from Cuba, and he comes back to DC to find that much has changed,
Okay.
and including his favorite barbershop that used to belong to this character Dollar Bill, and now it's called Vera's. And so it's it was is partially based on my trip to Cuba and what I experienced back in like '99 when we still had the embargo and everything.
Mm,
And the Elian Gonzalez was like headlining the news at that time because he had come over here to this country, and his mom died in the process, and I mean, and it was just like headline news for a variety of reasons.
yeah.
It was just like a heart-wrenching story. So a little bit of that is in the in the storyline as well. So
Awesome.
that's what kicked off the company. And like I said, right now, they're Raceman Telepictures is in development on a series. I can't go into it right now,
Sure.
but a series, but I will say that it's a spinoff of the new N word.
Okay.
Yeah, and a feature film based on a novel by a local DC author. So
Well, delving into the future, with the spin-off to the new N-word to this and the next feature film. What's next on the agenda as well? If you can, give us a little bit of a hint, maybe not, give away too much, but what's the next set of goals, next set of plans? What's next on the agenda, say 6 months to a year from now?
uh, to to be in production
Yeah.
on one or both of those projects.
Have you been back on set yet?
Not yet,
No.
not yet. And
Okay.
and just and as an actor, I have been going on auditions. Well, going on auditions like virtual auditions.
Virtual auditions. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, self tape is the reality now.
Hey, listen, I mean, self-tape was reality way before.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's funny you mentioned that, and I've mentioned this a number of times before on the show that I usually preferred self-tape,
Mm,
for a number of sneaky reasons. I like, if I got nothing else going on that day, of course I'm going to go into an audition,
hmm.
but I could bang out 5 different self-tapes as opposed to going to physically driving, being stuck in
Right,
traffic,
right,
go
right,
to an audition,
right.
drive home. But by doing 5 or 7 or 10 self-tapes a day or every other day, let's just say 5, that's 5 people. That's 5 times as many people that are seeing my face, hearing my voice, looking at my mannerisms, getting a taste of who I am, a little bit of a flair of what I can offer to this, that, and the other thing. And also it's for you and for you as well, I'm sure, because you're also a writer, producer, director. I'm sure you've done your fair share of editing and shooting yourself,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
scripting, scheduling, shot listing, prepping, breaking down. I could knock out 5 self submits as an actor, upload those. I can edit those videos, right? And I could like actually make myself look a little bit better, cut out some flubs, right? And then send them like a perfect self submit audition tape,
right.
and then spend the next 7 hours of that day, instead of being in traffic, working on my other side projects, my other passion projects, a screenplay or a
Right.
shot list for some super indie thing. I'm always shooting some, like ultra low budget production hacked passion project, uber independent, uber low budget, uh, YouTube web series or, you know, viral thing or some sort of like I'm started dabbling into like trying to pull off motion comics, and I'm doing like a lot of voiceover work and experimenting with other voiceover actors and trying to like really explore the whole new media kind of arena. And so as an actor, you know, you want to get as much work as possible. And as like a crew person, you know, if you're an experienced camera op, you're an experienced editor, experienced AD, you're really trying to push that resume out. And so I could sit here just at my laptop and apply for 100 different crew gigs, submit 5 self-submits for an audition, and then edit or write one of my own passion projects all in one day, as opposed to drive an hour out, wait in line at that audition, drive an hour home.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of these folks, I'm just like, and then another thing that would drive me nuts as an actor is a lot of times I'll get to the audition and then they show me, okay, these are the possible shoot dates. I'm sitting there and I'm like, well, I can't do these. I'm already booked on something else. And so it's like, why didn't you guys post that? Oh, well, we don't really have that information. You have it now. If you had it now, you didn't have it yesterday or the day before. You couldn't have put that in that email when you asked me to come out to this audition. And that's frustrating. But if I'm doing a bunch of self submits, I'll sit here and do a self submit, and then come to find out, oh, the shoot dates are on a date I'm already booked, or I'm out of town, or I'm unavailable for whatever reason. Okay, I don't care. I never left my house.
Now, are you a member of SAG-AFTRA?
I wish, but no.
Well, the one benefit, well, there are many benefits of being a SAG-AFTRA member. Now, I'm a fairly new SAG-AFTRA member. I got my credit when I worked on an episode of Law and Order SVU, and that was almost 3 years ago. Yeah, 2 seasons ago. Yeah, it was for the 20th season. I think they're in the 22nd now. Those little irksome items, you know, are virtually eliminated.
Yeah.
When you're a SAG-AFTRA member. But I will caution, as I was cautioned, that you want to, you know, weigh, is it worth it? Because if you're continually working, then, you know, you may want to weigh, okay, should I, you know, pursue the next level or just stay here? But the one big advantage of being a SAG-AFTRA member, the residuals.
Right.
You know, so I mean, but like I said, but if you're continuously working, you know, you got to weigh it.
Yeah.
But yeah, but being a member, and especially now in this pandemic, the union makes sure that you're protected from, you know, from productions that are not participating in according to CDC guidelines, etc., and also with like I said, with, you know, regarding the payment, so that the actor is not exploited. So I mean, I can't say enough good things about being in the union.
Yeah, I mean, of course, that's definitely, you know, one of my agendas to, you know, try to check that box, try to accomplish that, you know, when I can. But you know, the quarantine obviously, you know, put a wrench in that, and there hasn't been much that I've been able to act on that was, you know, SAG. What is it? A SAG eligible project, you know. So, you know, hopefully soon, once these floodgates open, I'll be back at it, and you know, if something falls in my lap, I hope I get it.
Yeah.
That's that sort of thing. And it's just working through it. I mean, again, I'm sure you get it. When it came to this quarantine, I was able to just switch gears and start prepping a lot of projects.
Good for you.
Production, really hack the production of some I always call it production hack, you know, like hacking this production. So we're able to still produce this, whether it's quarantine, whether it's for $10 per episode. How are we going to pull this off with like $0? Hey, here's an easy way. this, and this, and we pull it off, and it still looks great. I got to spend twice as much time editing as opposed to, you know, putting all this money into the production, and then things just, and it's a much simpler edit. It's a much simpler shoot and a more complicated edit, and that's fine. I was able to, you know, spend a lot of downtime when the quarantine first happened. I had a bunch of stuff in the can and just knocked it out, you know, rocked it out, knocked it out. So
Yeah, I mean that's guerrilla filmmaking.
yeah,
You know, that's what you do when you don't have a budget, and it helps to hone that skill when, you know, when you do get a budget.
yeah. And
So
it's almost turned into an addiction to me. Like, okay, I've had all these screenplays.
mhm.
Now let's take a look and figure out how can I produce them in the same manner, or, you know, how can I think outside the box? What is it, a motion comic now, or do CGI, or, you know, do claymation or Lego animation, or what, you know, all these different ways that other people are doing it. And it's like, okay, not only do I have no money for any productions, out of pocket money anyway, and I don't know anybody that knows anybody that knows anybody that's an investor or anything like that. So all right, so you know, so I figured out a really, you know, slick way of producing this crazy show. It has this Uber production hack on it. All right, well, now I got this. Here's a feature length script. Do something
Mhm.
completely different. You know, completely, you know, turn the tables on that kind of production and see what I can get away. And it's just, it almost became like a challenge. How do I pull this off?
Mm.
How do I pull this off with no money in my basement? Sort of deal.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's tricky. It's, you know, just bizarre
And you know,
outside.
it's but I'm listening to you and think about it. That's exactly what's happening in the industry now.
Right.
So you have, I mean, you haven't seen it yet, but you're about to see like a slew of these COVID themed shows that are going to hit the air. You
Yeah.
know, and that's another advantage of the union. You know, you get you know, you get to read and hear about these stories
Yeah.
that are you know, about to hit the pipeline. And that just kind of generates ideas, and you're like, oh, maybe I can do a COVID theme thing with no money and sell it to a network.
Hmm.
You know, yeah.
Yeah.
So what you're doing is exactly what the industry is doing now.
Well, good
You
to
know,
hear. Good to hear. Maybe I'll stick with it. I don't know.
yeah, yeah,
But
absolutely, man.
when you hear of the new normal, what comes to mind when you hear this phrase "new normal"?
Uh, I think what comes to mind for me is, you know, this new normal is really not not too new, and it's not too normal
Right. Yeah.
for one. For one, but i- i- after spending years in the industry, you know, you learn how to adjust. You know, adjusting is nothing new, especially if you're a filmmaker of color in this industry where, you know, the for decades, you know, the goalpost has always been moved when you know, achieve quote unquote a new normal. Um, so it's really just an adjustment. I mean, when I hear new normal, I just think, okay, this is what I've always been doing. This is what my colleagues have always been doing. Um, I will say that with the advance of technology, it makes a smoother transition to whatever the current situation is.
Yeah.
Um, you know, and having, you know, like I said, because, you know, I'm an old man now, you know, having not had those technological tools, and still finding a way to make it makes it a lot easier with these tools that make your, you know, your craft, um, uh, that makes a transition easier. But the bottom line is that you still have to be committed to what you're doing, and you still have to love what you're doing, because, you know, otherwise you're going to be doing something else,
Yeah.
because this industry will eat you alive if you don't love what you're doing, period.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've said that probably just about every episode of this podcast. I've said that to my
Mm,
colleagues a million times. I've said it to other, you know, colleagues and fellow filmmakers. Is that, you know, you you're only going to be successful at doing something you absolutely love.
Yep.
You know, the reason why you're doing something, because sometimes the pay is not going to be there. Sometimes the pay is great, and that really is a bigger turn on. But then there's some gigs that are, you know, like it's decent pay, it's very low pay, but you're like, man, it was a blast. It was awesome
Right.
working on this
Right.
thing. It was a blast working on this other thing. It was amazing seeing it come together and watching it on the big screen or watching it on TV. And if you absolutely truly love what you're doing, I mean, I've had a number of colleagues quit music, quit acting, quit filmmaking, quit DJing,
Mm.
and it's like, well, why did you quit? Well, the money's not there. It's like, you really didn't want to do it.
Right, right, and the other thing is, there are a combination of factors that contribute to your success, and success can be broadly defined. But one thing that I've seen consistently across the board is a love for the craft, serious study of the industry and how it works, and your attitude, man. I mean, all of the things that money can't buy, basically.
Yeah.
If you're a talented person, but you have a crappy attitude and people, don't want to work with you, then you're only going to get us so far in this industry.
Yeah.
Look at the glowing um, praise that Chadwick Boseman got with everyone he's worked with. And this was a man who was a phenomenal talent, and people were genuinely, heartbroken when he passed away.
Yeah.
You know, but I was listening. As a matter of fact, back to Taraji, not Taraji, Nicole Bahari. She's in this film Miss Juneteenth, and she was talking about working with Chadwick Boseman, and it was perceived that the first time they worked together was on the film 42. But and by the way, Daryl Pryor, who's I believe a Baltimore producer, produced that film. Um, but he lives in LA now. Um, but she was talking about how the atmosphere was such that you could have easily complained on that set. He never complained. You know, um, the fact that he advocated for equal pay on 21 Bridges, for his co-star. I mean, just you want to be that person that everyone wants to be around.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
know, and money has nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
That's all. That's a character issue.
Yeah. And he was getting his treatments in between sets, but he was still going to work. He still loved this. He loved his craft. He loved doing, the Marvel movies. He loved doing all the movies in between, and he would get treatments before and after, or somehow in between, and he made it work because he just loved doing what he was doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you what was I was going to ask you maybe some advice for what few viewers we do, what little viewership I do have. I was going to ask you for some advice, but I think that's it. I mean that says a lot, and it rings true with me, and it's just great. Like sometimes some viewers are like, oh man, it's boring. Everybody has the same advice. I'm like, no, it's actually really good that we all have the same advice. We're all clicking and we're all saying, yeah, man, you have to do what you love. I mean, if you just love to paint houses, I know dudes that just love to cut trees down. And they're in great shape. They're strong. They're healthy. They're fit. They love to be outdoors. They're tan. They take that money. They go to the beach for a month, and they're like jacked and shredded and tanned on the beach already. And it's like, is that something I should get into? It's like, I wouldn't want to do that. I want to get jacked and shredded and tanned, but I don't want to cut trees down. That's not my thing.
Exactly.
But I know a couple of guys that just love it. They just love to trim trees or cut trees down. They love it.
Yeah, and the other thing, man, it works wonders just for your psyche,
Yeah.
because especially in a pandemic when, and hey, I'm in a house with everyone that I love, but I'm telling you, if I don't have that escape, if I can't like just like delve into my writing and just have that silence, I'll go crazy.
Hmm.
Think about people who are miserable at their job.
Yeah.
I don't. How do you do that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, how do you even motivate yourself? And if money is the end goal, I mean, what kind of goal is that?
Yeah. And going back to like why I started this podcast. Well,
Hmm.
okay, quarantine, everything's shut down, locked down. I knew, and I got lucky, and I can explain how things just kind of fell into place. I've never been busier in my life
Yes.
than during quarantine. But say, March 15th or March 20th, I think I started doing the podcast. We failed, me and some colleagues failed at this twice, I think already, this podcast, trying to put together a podcast. And even before quarantine, we tried to do it this virtual way. And
Hmm.
I think I had one guy calling in on Skype, another guy calling in on Google Hangouts. Or no, we were no, all three of us were both on Skype and Google Hangouts, but I could only bring in one video of Skype, then one video of Google Hangouts. Communication was just the whole tech setup, the whole communication tech setup was so disastrous. So it didn't really work out. But in March, it was like, okay, I got to do something. I got to stay productive. I got to stay active. Audio, video, somehow, like a TV show or a radio show, an audio, video thing. Let's try the podcast again. And then I thought to myself, okay, let me reach out to other Joes that are, you know, Joes and Janes in film and TV. And like I told you, start on the phone. Hey, man, it's like we're freaking out about this quarantine, man. Like, when are we going to get back to work? And that's how we started. And then as
Wow.
we're getting closer to the vaccine, right? Like, so now it's been a year, and you got and so here you are, Shawande, got something coming out on Amazon. You've been prepping, so now we're in what, month 9 of the quarantine,
Yeah.
and so you've got a bunch of stuff ready to pull the trigger on. Once we get that vaccine, you got a bunch of stuff to pull the trigger on, and you've had one or two things come out during, and a lot of other folks that I've had on the show, a couple of actresses and actors. I've been back on set a couple times, very safe. We were all COVID compliant. Um, Something I acted on right before the quarantine came out. Okay, some cool success stories. We get to about a year into quarantine. We're right there at that cusp. Some guests might be like, hey, but the whole thing for me was to get this thing rolling, because what else was there to do? Like, I'll
Right.
be honest with you, I probably, getting you on board the podcast, I just spammed the shit out of LinkedIn, to be completely honest with you. I just spammed everybody. I did a search.
Hmm.
I did a search to add new people, you know, by industry: motion picture, entertainment, TV,
Hmm.
media, film, broadcasting, video games, artists, music, blah, 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 blah. Check these boxes to kind of filter my search to add these folks to LinkedIn. And then the next week, do the same search, but people that are already my connections, and then start messaging them. And I'm spamming the hell out of LinkedIn, because what's the worst thing you could tell me is, no, I'm not interested. How do I even know you? I'm like, and I'll be even honest then. You're not interested? No worries, man. Best of luck to you. Oh, we don't even know each other. I'm spamming people because you told me the worst thing you could have said was just no.
Exactly. Exactly. Right. Right. And in this business, if you can't take a no, you're definitely in the
You,
wrong business,
yeah,
especially as an actor.
yeah.
And I do want to leave on this advice. It was something that I saw on social media that just kind of resonated with me, and it was saying, how different things were hard. Like I said, marriage is hard, divorce is hard, choose your hard. And that just kind of resonated with me because, I mean, life is hard,
Yeah.
you know?
Hmm.
So it's like, are you going to choose your hard? I mean, are you going to, I mean, this is a grind. So do you want to do that? Or do you want to, work at a job that you're really not feeling and go into that every day being miserable?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, so my advice is this. Um, if you want to I mean, if you're passionate about anything, really, I mean, it's not just, acting or filmmaking. I mean, if you're passionate about anything, if you want to be successful at it, first create a plan. Create a plan that, you know, people will be glad to get behind, for one, and create a plan that plays to your strengths, and all of the weaknesses that you discover in the creation of that plan, have people who are equally as passionate about that on your team.
Yeah.
Don't just stop at, oh man, well, see, I can't do that. Okay, good. You see that you can't do that. Who in your network can? And if there's no one in your network can, then ask and find someone, but don't stop. That's it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I couldn't agree with you more to this phrase, choose your hard. I know so many guys that are lazy. Actually, have you ever watched Seinfeld?
Oh, that was one of my favorite shows.
Jerry Jerry Seinfeld was talking about George Costanza when George Costanza was on unemployment. He's never worked harder in his life
How about that?
except to get the unemployment. But how about you put half that effort,
Right,
just half that effort, into pursuing something you love
right,
or you like,
right.
or just something that like moderately interests you. And I've known those Costanzas.
Hmm.
Somebody that quit on, something, something that quit, something they quit, they had quit on something that they were fantastic at,
Hmm.
right? And now they're doing like 17 other things and they're working twice as hard for something that they don't even care about. And
Right,
it's
right.
like, it's like, choose your heart.
Hmm.
I get it. We need to pay bills. I get that. You
Right.
have to pay bills. You
Yep.
have to put gas in the car. You got to put food in your belly. You got to, support the wife and kid. You have
Hmm.
to pay rent. You have to pay the
Yep.
mortgage. You got to keep the lights on. You can't foreclose. You can't be evicted. I get that. But you're you're always late to all this stuff because you're hustling and running around and your head's in
Yep.
50 different places. Whereas, with me, it's like my Google Calendar pretty much runs it all. Acting gig, production gig, podcast guest, podcast guest, podcast guest,
Hmm.
virtual industrial gig from home, acting gig, day off, day off. Okay, family all day on the weekends, family at night. I'm gonna drop the kid off to daycare, podcast, pick him up from daycare. It's the kid the rest of the day. I know what I want to do. I'm doing it. I'm scheduling it. I'm streamlining what it is I want to do and what I love to do. And again, quarantine be damned. That kind of forced me into a much more refined kind of certain shelves and slots. But it is what it is.
Yep. And the bottom line is, you just laid out. You plan your work, work your plan.
Yeah.
There's no like magic bullet. And be willing to hear more no's than yeses, because that's what you're going to hear. I'm very fortunate that, you know, I'm at peace in front of the camera. I'm in my element in front of the camera and behind the camera.
Yeah.
So, you know, find that for yourself and go for it.
And that's an additional blessing that I have as well. As I'm talented in front as well as behind. Um,
I am going to have to wrap it up.
Okay, no problem, no
All
problem,
right.
no problem at all. We'll say hi to the kid for me, and
Okay.
Shawande, right?
Yep.
Shawande, I can't thank you enough for coming on and you know, sharing your experiences, your knowledge, your advice. I'm always continued to be inspired, and so to my viewers, I hope I've earned the privilege of your time and viewership. I know my guest has, and until next time, you know what to do.
All right.